A Viking bride's wedding night was not a celebration of romance. It was a night so brutal that countless women lived in terror of the very day. Their families told them to rejoice. Behind the sagas of fearless warriors and glorious battles hides a truth. Rarely spoken Viking marriage was not about love, but about alliances, control, and survival. What followed the vows was a series of rituals so harsh that some women whispered they would rather face the cold embrace of death than the duties of their wedding night. These practices were drenched in blood, bound by law, and carried out in public, viewed to strip women of their freedom and remake them into wives. Today, I am going to take you deep inside this forgotten world to reveal the 5 most disturbing traditions Viking brides endured. What you're about to hear will change the way you think about Viking romance forever. I'm your host, Cloaked Testament, and this is the Time-Worn Record, where we deep dive into the most mysterious corners of history, unveiling the truths or myths that have been hidden or forgotten. What could possibly be hidden behind the curtain today? It began with the death of the Maiden. Before a bride could walk to the feast hall or stand beside her husband, she was forced through rituals that symbolically killed the girl she had been. In the dim heat of a bathhouse, she was led by her mother, aunts, and married friends, women who carried the weight of years of obedience to husbands. This was no gentle cleansing. The water was meant to strip her of her identity. As steam rose and whispered around the wooden beams, she was reminded again and again that her former life was gone. The silver circlet in her hair, a sign to all that she was unwed and untouched, was removed in a slow and ceremonial act that cut like a knife. To lose that circlet was to lose herself. The older women instructed her in hushed, urgent voices about what awaited her, how to serve, how to bear children, how to obey, how to please. It was less guidance than warning. When she emerged, the girl was gone, and in her place stood a wife-to-be, already crushed under the weight of expectation. While she was being stripped of her past, men gathered elsewhere to decide her future. Viking marriage was a contract, a negotiation where a woman's worth was measured not in affection, but in silver, livestock, and land. The bride's father and the groom's kin haggled over payments like merchants at a market stall. The bride price, meant to compensate her family for losing her labor, was discussed in blunt terms, as though she were a prized servant being transferred. The dowry, her share of inheritance, was laid on the table to ensure the new household had wealth. But in truth, it tethered her future to her husband's fortune. Consent was, at best, a formality. Some sagas tell of fathers asking their daughters if they agreed. But what daughter could deny her father when the fate of her entire clan depended on the match? For many women, their marriage was decided in rooms they were never invited into. By the time she learned of her husband's name, her destiny had already been sealed in words spoken by men who would never sleep in the bed she now feared. And then came the feast, a spectacle that was less about joy than about law and divine power. On the chosen day, often a Friday dedicated to Freya, the goddess of marriage, families gathered in longhouses adorned with shields, tapestries, and the smell of roasted meat. But beneath the laughter and mead was a heavy seriousness. The exchange of wealth was made public before witnesses, a reminder that this was a binding contract. Then the gods were summoned with blood. Animals sacred to fertility and strength, boars for Freya, goats for Thor, were led into the hall. Their throats were cut, and warm blood spilled across the earth. A priest dipped a bundle of twigs into the crimson flow and sprinkled it over the couple. Imagine standing in your finest dress, the heavy crown, biting into your scalp as droplets of blood slid down your skin. Your body already claimed by your husband, now marked by the gods. This was no tender blessing. It was a violent reminder that fertility was demanded of you. Whether you wished it or not, the rituals deepened in their cruelty. The exchange of swords followed. The groom pressed his blade into the bride's hands, a weapon she was expected to safeguard for the son she had not yet conceived. In return, her family offered an ancestral sword, a silent transfer of her protection from kin to husband. To drive the message home, a symbol of Thor's hammer was placed upon her lap in front of everyone, an unmistakable sign that her womb was now consecrated to the duty of bearing children. It was a ritual that left no room for doubt her value. Her survival, her honor, all hinged on her ability to produce heirs. Every eye in the room bore down on her as the hammer lay heavy in her lap, a public declaration of what she was expected to endure that night. But the ceremony was not complete until the most dreaded moment arrived. the march to the bridal bed, unlike the modern notion of privacy. The consummation of a Viking marriage was a legal requirement, and it demanded witnesses. As the feast waned and torches flickered low, the bride and groom were escorted by a solemn procession of family and friends. At least 6 witnesses followed, their task, to ensure that the couple entered the bedchamber together. Picture the bride's heart hammering as she walked, every step echoing with fear, knowing that her first night with her husband was not hers alone. The witnesses watched, confirming with cold, clinical eyes that she crossed the threshold. Some historians argue they remained outside the door. Others suggest they lingered longer, listening, waiting for proof that the contract was fulfilled. Either way, the bride knew there was no escape. Her body had become the stage upon which her family's honor and her husband's rights were validated. For her, this was not intimacy. This was obligation, humiliation, and fear. And just when the night seemed unbearable, dawn brought its own ritual. The morning gift. Upon rising, the groom presented his new wife with property, silver, cattle, or rights to land. To outsiders, it looked like a generous offering, a security for the woman. But in reality, it was a binding tether. From that moment, her fate was locked to her husband's household. She had no power beyond the fortune he granted her. Alongside this gift came the keys, heavy iron keys pressed into her palm, then fastened to her belt for all to see. They symbolized her control of the household stores. Yet they were also a constant reminder of her duty. If food was mismanaged, if goods went missing, if rumors spread of dishonesty, the blame fell squarely on her. The keys did not free her, they shackled her. She was now the gatekeeper of a world, not her own, imprisoned by expectations she could not refuse. So why were Viking marriages such terrifying ordeals for women? Because each step was designed not to honor her, but to erase her. The bathhouse stripped away her maidenhood. The marriage contract reduced her to a bargaining chip. The feast bound her in blood before gods and kin. The wedding night turned her body into proof of legality. And the morning gift sealed her role as keeper of a household. She had no power to leave. These were not acts of love. They were acts of control, tradition, and survival. In a world where women's lives were currencies in the hands of men. The sagas tell of heroes and battles. But hidden between the lines is this truth for Viking women. The wedding night was not the start of a love story. It was the beginning of a life, lived under the weight of expectation, law, and fear. And yet, in whispers, we hear of women who resisted, who defied the contracts, who ran from the feast hall into the night rather than submit. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest rituals, there were sparks of rebellion. History often romanticizes the Vikings as fierce lovers and bold adventurers. But if you look closely at the lives of their brides, you'll find a reality that was far more brutal, a story of survival rather than celebration. And that is why these hidden truths matter, because they reveal the cost of traditions we might otherwise glorify. If you want more forgotten tales like this, subscribe and ring the bell. Every day we uncover the side of history they never wanted you to see. Let us know in the comments which of these rituals shocked you the most. And join us tomorrow for another story history tried to erase.